Scheiße!
Hello, welcome guys to Sonic the Hedgehog, and welcome back to another video after almost 2 years, actually. In this video, we're gonna play Scrub Mechanic again, and I'm gonna show you a tutorial on how to build a super realistic elevator, meaning super realistic elevator is an elevator that doesn't just go up and down and doesn't have a floor indicator. No, this version is also gonna have to have, like, you know, elevators, they have sheaves, that's how they work. It's gonna have turning sheaves and all of that, so let's get straight into it. We're building our super realistic elevator, so I'm gonna put down the lift, and the first thing you're gonna need is some blocks. So let's pick out. So I'm gonna pick out my most favorite block. Most people are probably gonna hate me or judge me for that, but my most favorite block here is the aluminum block. So I'm gonna use it right here, and I'm gonna use this. I'm gonna build a plenty big platform. Next, we're gonna need some sort of piston. So let's get a piston, and I'm gonna use my favorite. And you know what? I'm actually going to use the standard piston because these mod pistons, I'm going to show you. These mod pistons are from the mod pack are great because they go up to 248 blocks. But as you see over here, it's notoriously hard and really hard to actually set a correct value. You can see you have to scroll like this. And sometimes when you have multiple pistons on the elevator, you can fuck it up. And you can have inconsistencies. The elevator can be, you know, stopping midway and so on. So how we're going to start is I'm going to use 4 pistons. So I'm going to put a piston here, a piston here, and a piston here, and a piston here. And this basically composes the system which is going to move the elevator. The sheaves are not going to be moving the elevator. That's just a decorational part. As I said, super realistic. Next, we're going to build a platform over all these 4 pistons. And we got that part done. So that's our platform built. Next, we're going to build the rest of the elevator. I'm actually going to use different blocks. And my second most favorite glass block is our armored glass block. So I'm going to build a cage. So I'm going to make it this tall, I guess. Something like that. Yeah. Something like that. So we're going to build basically a cage like this. And this is going to be the main structure of the elevator. Of the elevator car. So let's get rid of these blocks at the top. So this is our elevator car. I'm going to put in some glass blocks as well to form our walls and the roof. And also we'll build the door later. But let's deal with this. So now I'm going to put a panel over here. This is going to be our control panel. This is where our control panel is going to go. And then I'm going to use my secret powers of levitation, powered by that little engine over there. And I'm going to build a structure for the 2 sheaves, which are going to sit at the top. And I didn't make this an odd number of blocks. It's an even number of blocks, meaning this is not going to fit so well, but oh well. So we're going to put some sheaves at the top. We're going to make it a bottom drive elevator, shall we say. So let's get into our first part, which is going to be the logic for moving the lift up and down. So let's get the required parts for that. So we're going to get a button, and I'm going to use a button with numbers. I think so. We're going to use a 0 button and a number 1 button. Next, what we'll need to do, we'll of course need logic gates. So let's get a logic gate. We're going to need timers. So let's get a timer. And we're also going to need a number display. If I remember what's its name. I didn't play this game in quite a while. Yeah, we need this thing, number block. And we're also going to need a power combiner. So let's get a power combiner as well. And I'm also going to use some arrow buttons for the floor indicators, for the hole buttons, basically. So let's say that this is going to be our first floor over here. So I'm going to put this over here. And I'm going to put a number block on top of that. And that's going to indicate the position of the lift. Now, I'm just going to put a little disclaimer here. The system I'm using for the super realistic lift only works at 2-floor lifts, meaning ground floor and second floor. I haven't tested it. I actually haven't tested it on lifts which have more floors. That's in development, but this is essentially what we have. So this is basically our sort of beginning right here. Next, we need to do the buttons in the lift. So let's see if I actually... No, they are of course not oriented right. So let's put our control buttons in the lift. Oriented the wrong way. Yes, it's finally in the correct orientation. Next, I'm also going to paint this button, ground floor button green. You can see this is our buttons. This is going to be our coal button over here. This is basically our ground floor of the lift, and I'm gonna make the lift go up 15 blocks. So let's set the pistons to their maximum extension rates. So you now need to calculate 15 blocks from the bottom, so 15 blocks. That's our block over here. Next, I'm gonna build the next floor up here. I'm gonna get up here and actually build this platform properly. This is gonna be our next floor. I'm also gonna... Oh my god, I need to make it like that so it doesn't fall off. This is not like Minecraft where you can have floating blocks. This is not how Scrap Mechanic works. Gravity actually works in this game. And we're gonna make the call button, and we're gonna make a call button for our second lift. And goddamn, can you get up onto the fucking... See the flying in this game? It's by modded engine. You can't fly in the vanilla game, and it's just... Oh my god, it really isn't easy to use. So this is our second floor, and this is our second floor call button. So we have all of this stuff set up. Next thing we need to do is do the logic. So let's start with the logic. So we're gonna start building the logic. So for our first floor of the lift, we need to put down a logic gate, and that's gonna be an OR logic gate. I'm also gonna put down 2 power combiners over here, which are gonna be used are they power combiners? Yes, they are. I'm just checking. These are gonna be used to connect the buttons. I'm actually straight gonna connect this one to the logic gate. Next, our second floor is going to be a bit more complicated, where we essentially need an OR logic gate, then a timer, and then a NOR logic gate, an OR logic gate, and a NOR logic gate. And then we need to connect these up in a sequence, and connect this NOR logic gate back to this, no, and then connect this logic gate to this one. Yeah, so that's how we do it. So you connect these two in series, and then you link the final NOR logic gate to the first NOR logic gate, and then you link the input of this back to here, and then you link this input, and you link this logic gate, and you feed this logic gate onto the output over here. So I'm just gonna check if this works correctly. So I'm gonna put some testing buttons onto here. So does this work properly? It doesn't, because we need to set the timer to 2 ticks. So 2 ticks, so second floor is 2 ticks, third floor is 3 ticks, and so on. To add more floors, you just add on more of these circuits, and that's how it works. So now I can see if I select this, you can see it will go up, and will go down. So this is our main elevator logic. So next I'm going to connect up all the appropriate buttons. So our bottom call button is for the ground floor, so that will go here, as well as the ground floor button in the elevator car, and then we're going to connect up our top floor call button to the top floor interface, and then we're gonna connect up the top floor button to here. So obviously now we actually connected up the whole lift. And next we connect up the output of this NOR logic gate to all the pistons. And this is essentially the entire logic of the elevator. And this is now a fully functional elevator, so meaning if I push this, we don't work. What's wrong here? Alright, it's on the lift. I'm an idiot. So yeah, now you can see the elevator is going up. It's going uppity up. And it should stop round about there. And then if I push the call button, the elevator goes down. And there we go. We have a fully functional elevator. Well, this ain't so easy. We want to make this ultra-realistic. And I'm gonna leave my insane secret recipe to making the pulleys turn when the lift travels. I'm gonna leave that for the end. But now, what we need to do is, we need to do the interface. Because you can see here, we need these number blocks to display the floor that the lift is at. But you can see it doesn't work right now, so we need to do the logic for that. And that's quite simple. You just need to do a self-latching switch. So we're gonna use 6 logic gates for that. Post-editing note, this part of the video was cut out and sped up, so that way you can watch me suffer with my fucking mistakes, because I somehow totally fucked up connecting the logic gates together, and it just did not work correctly. It kept fucking up, it kept oscillating, it would be intermittent, and all of that stuff. So I did actually fix it in the next part of the video, but now I'm just gonna let you suffer, basically suffer with me and watch me as I cannot figure out what I'm doing wrong. So here you go. Okay, I, for some reason, totally fucked up the main part of where I was actually building the circuit for indicating the floor position. So let me show it again, because I kind of fucked it up. So how do you do this? Simple. You need sensors. So I'm gonna get a sensor. I'm gonna get a level 4 sensor maybe. And what you need, and the circuit for that is just a simple self-latching switch. So you use 6 logic gates. The top 3 ones are gonna be set to exclusive OR. And the middle bottom one is going to be set to NOR, and then these two are going to stay as AND. Next, you connect the AND gate to the NOR gate, and the NOR gate to the last AND gate. Then, you connect the first AND gate to the last AND gate. Then the first AND logic gate connects to all the 3 exclusive OR logic gates, and then those connect together like this. And then you loop the last one back to the first one, and then you connect the switch to this AND logic gate over here, and then if I push it, you can see it turns on and off. So let's get rid of this switch, and let's put a power combiner over here, and we're going to connect that to there. So that's basically essentially our input. So next, our output, meaning these logic gates, are going to be set to, so the, basically, our input is this first AND logic gate over here. I'm actually going to paint it, white. So our white logic gate over here is the input, and our black logic gates over here are the output. So the white one is the input, the black ones are the output. So, our output is gonna go to all the number blocks. Again, I haven't tested the system for multiple floor lifts. It works just for 2 floor lifts, as far as I have tested. And then next we're gonna build a platform here for all the sensors, because there's gonna be more. So next, you need to put down a sensor over here. That sensor is going to be connected up to here. And then you need to put a sensor up here, meaning I'm going to actually send a lift up. And I'm going to put a sensor up here. And make sure you connect the logic gate pointing to the number block, because the number block can also work as an input to the logic gate. It doesn't only work as a number output. It can also work as a logic component. So, I'm going to put another sensor over here and connect that back to our power combiner. And now you can see if it goes down, if I'm doing it correctly, it should indicate a 1. Okay, might have got... Okay, so post-editing number 2. Yes, the second time I was stupid and fucked something up again. Turns out that, you know, the number blocks from the mod pack uses really advanced logic where if you paint the logic gates, which act as the inputs or the outputs of, for example, the number block, if you paint them black, they behave completely differently from being unpainted. So that's why in the next segment of the video, which I again sped up and put Kevin MacLeod's meatball parade over to just make you suffer with me. Yeah, that's where I was suffering, because I just could not figure out what was wrong. The numbers weren't changing on the number blocks, but then I suddenly just realized it and redone the whole thing. So watch me suffer as I can't resolve the issue. Okay, guys, I figured out the problem. You know how the mod pack like has these super smart parts here? Well, the fucking color of the input logic gate changes what the block does. So let's remove the paint from these and see what happens. See, and it now indicates 1. So we need to connect this one up as well. And there you go, now it's working. So let's... Oh my god, now let's reset this. So I can see it's showing a 0, and if we go into the lift and travel up, you travel uppity up, you can see it shows a... Okay, I need to make a cutout over here. But you can see... You can see it's now working. So you can see now our indicator is not working. So if I call the lift down and it comes down, see, it's actually right up to the wrong position. Okay, you can see that now the indicator works. So when I push 1, you can see the lift goes up slowly, and then once it reaches the top floor, this changes to 1. So let me push it down. You can see it slowly goes down. And now you can see it's reached the ground floor and it's showing a 0. If I call it back up, you can see that it's now showing a 1, which means it's in the top floor. So let's call it back downstairs. So now we built basically the essential parts of the lift. So the essential parts of any good scrap mechanic lifts are built, like the button controller and the indicators for the floor position. And now comes the Sonic's secret system for controlling the super realistic system. So remember how I said that we need the lift to work super realistically in the way that it's going to have pulleys at the top or sheaves, like any old lift? Well, those sheaves need to turn. And now I'm going to show you how to build my secret system. So let's make 2 fields. So we're going to make a green field, which is going to be the ground floor. And we're going to make, I don't know, like a red field, which is going to be our top floor. I'm going to make a yellow indication point where the lift car is. So something like that. And then what we need to do is we need the 2 sensors. So primary sensor, secondary sensor. Primary sensor, secondary sensor. Next, we need 2 pistons. So, piston, piston, and then a block onto that. Then, we need a power combiner, a logic gate, which we're going to send to NAND, so it inverts the output. And we're going to need an electric engine, which is going to turn the wheel. So next, what we need to do is you connect both primary sensors onto here. Then you connect the ground floor secondary sensor to the top floor piston. And then you connect the top floor secondary sensor to the ground floor piston. Just like this. And then you connect the output of the power combiner to here, to the logic gate. And then you connect the logic gate to the motor, and you take up the motor's RPM, and there you go, the wheel starts happily spinning. When the lift car arrives at the bottom floor, meaning it sits right here, there you go, it stops. You can see how it works. Then when you call the lift up and it starts moving, it suddenly takes off, and this starts, and the sheath starts, and this starts spinning. And then once the lift arrives at the top floor, the lift stops there, the sensor is detected, and the wheel stops. And this is essentially how it works. So I'm going to show you the connections right here. This is how you need to connect it up. Nothing special, nothing too complicated. If you have the Access Scripted Objects pack, with this power combiner, everything is super simple. This is literally, like, it's such a complicated task to solve here in Scrap Mechanic because there's no such thing as PLCs. You know, there's no programming here, just logic gates. And you can see, if you just think about it, there's a very simple solution. It's just very few parts. You don't have to have pretty much any understanding of logic unless you need to build a T flip-flop if you don't have mods. But still, this is like super easy and it gets the job done just fine. I know, like, it doesn't work flawlessly. Sometimes the wheels spin for a while before the lift arrives at the top. It just sometimes, and you need to deal with the sensors and all that. But other than that, it works really well. So that's basically what we use to turn wheels in Scrap Mechanic. Well, we first need a bunch of things to make a wheel turn. We need the wheel itself. So let's... Why can't I change? Yes, there we go. So let's take another hotbar. And let's get a wheel. So, let's get a wheel. So let's get a nice looking wheel like this one. I don't know. Let's get a wheel which looks a lot like a traction sheath of an elevator. Where is it? You know which one I mean. Yes, the muscle car wheel. So this is what we're going to use. Next, we're going to need bearings. This is where the wheel mounts. And we're also going to need an engine. And I'm actually going to use my favorite engine from the mod pack. And it's the mod engine, which which I'm actually going to mount over here, which not only has a really nice speed range, but it's also completely quiet. Doesn't make any noise when it's running the bearings, which is nice. So let me explain what we need to happen for our system to work. So what we need to happen in a super realistic elevator is a super realistic elevator. If you don't know how an elevator works, it's got these things. These are wheels, and you call them sheaves. And that's what the ropes go around to, and that's what moves the lift up and down. And obviously, in Scrap Mechanic, there are no ropes, if you know the game. And if you want to make a super realistic elevator where the sheaves turn, when the elevator travels, it's not as easy. It's actually quite hard. So I'm going to show you how to do it. So you can see I put a wheel on a bearing. So let's connect an engine to it. And if I take it up to full speed, you can see it turns nicely. So, so what we want to happen is, when the lift is still and isn't moving, we need this wheel to stop. But when the lift starts traveling, when you push the button and it starts going down, we need the wheel to start spinning. And that's not as easy as it seems. So I'm going to show you how I do it. So how we do it, it requires quite a lot of thinking, and it uses like a lot of sensors, and it's actually quite hard, and I actually can't even believe that I figured it out. But let me show how I do this. So each floor is going to have two sensors. So there's going to be a sensor right here. So we're going to put a sensor right here, which is going to sense... basically, this is going to be our secondary sensor. And then we're going to have the primary sensor behind here. And I actually need to rebuild this because this is kind of idiotic how I'm doing it. But let me move this off to the side a bit. So what we're going to need is, there's two sensors. There's a primary sensor and the secondary sensor. The primary sensor is what's used for actually turning the motor on and off. So this is going to be a primary sensor over here, and then there's going to be a secondary sensor, which I'm actually going to put over here. And yeah, so this is going to be our secondary sensor. I'm actually put it over here. And how this is going to work is, then we're going to basically need a piston. So we're going to put a block down, a piston, and a block. I'm going to put this to fast speed, and let me just check real quick that it extends. Okay, that's not how we want to behave. Let's just put it on slow. Yeah, so this is basically how this is going to work. I'm going to explain that very shortly, but this attachment over here, primary sensor, secondary sensor, and a piston, which is used to block off that sensor. We need to do the same thing on the top floor. So I'm also going to put a cutout over here, so that way when the lift goes up, it doesn't trigger it. You need to put it in a clever place, so that way the lift doesn't trigger it 2 times when it goes up and down. So next we're going to put, again, and another sensor over here. This is going to be our secondary sensor. I'm going to put a primary sensor over here, and then I'm going to put down a block, a piston, and a block which is going to be used to block the sensor. So next, what we do is, we connect up. What we need to happen here is, we need the output, this primary sensor, we need it to turn on the motor when the lift is traveling, and turn off the motor when the lift has stopped. So how do we do this? Well, we need the sensor to be blocked off. So I'm going to take the top primary sensor and connect it up to the bottom piston. And then we're going to take the bottom, not the primary sensor, secondary sensor. Then we're going to take the bottom secondary sensor and connect it up to the top piston. Next, we need to put down a logic gate, a NAND logic gate, and yet another power combiner. We're going to set this logic gate to NAND, and we're going to connect this power combiner onto here. Next, we're going to connect the power combiner to our drive motor. And then next, we're going to connect both of the primary sensors to our power combiner. And you can see our output is off right now, meaning the motor is off. When I send the lift upstairs, the logic gate turns on, starts shining, meaning that our motor should be running, but it's not connected to any wheel, so it's not doing anything. And you can see the lift has just stopped, and this output has turned off, meaning the motor shouldn't be turning. When I call it back downstairs, the second it starts moving, this logic gate will activate the electric motor, and when it reaches the bottom, you can see the logic gate shuts off, shutting off the motor. So next, So next thing that awaits us is the sheaves and all of that stuff. So let's do this somehow. You know what, I'm just going to do it like this. I'm going to tell you a tutorial how to build a realistic traction machine and all that. So let's take some other stuff. So let's take an engine. Let's take this super high horsepower engine from the new Legend mod, which looks like a high power electric motor. And I'm gonna take a tank engine, which looks a lot like a gearbox. Then next, let's start building all this stuff. So I'm gonna like put the traction machine of the elevator, which is what moves the elevator up and down, like up here. I'm gonna paint this blue, you know, like that. Yeah, paint that blue as well. Not red, blue. Let's put a bearing on that and that. And I'm not gonna make this. This is just a demonstration. So this is gonna be our drive sheath, and I'm gonna connect that up to that electric motor. Next, we're gonna put our two deflecting sheaths over here. Pop, pop, paint them yellow, connect them both to the engine, just like so. And then, every lift also has a counterweight, so let's also give it a counterweight, shall we? So we'll put the counterweight over here, I'll extend the lift, and we'll put a counterweight down onto here, so I'm again gonna give it 4 pistons, something like that, yeah. Let's just mount this onto here, let's, I don't know, make the counterweight a bit taller, maybe like this. Yes, this is essentially going to be our counterweight, and I might as well actually make it different. Make it actually a odd number, because of fitment reasons. So let's put it down like this. Let's make it like this. Let's put a platform. Make it, I don't know, like this tall. Let's go on to here like that. Give it its own deflecting sheath, something like that. Paint it yellow, and connect that to the same old engine. But, the problem here, we're facing another problem. We can't just connect these pistons to the same output over here. Because what would essentially happen is the counterweight and the lift will move in the same direction. And that's not how a lift works, because when a lift is down, the counterweight is up. When the lift is up, the counterweight is down. So what we need to do here is very simple. We'll just add another logic gate, which is going to be a NAND logic gate, meaning it's going to invert the output. This is now going to be on. And all we need to do is connect it up to all the pistons. And connect all of them or it's not going to work. And take it up to full height. So the full 15 blocks. So now the counterweight is going up. And all we need to do is now all we need to do is we need to set the engine to a sensible running speed of the sheaves like that. So now, let's call the lift up and observe it in operation. So see, the sheaves are turning. Let's make it a bit faster so that way it's more visible. Let me show you again. Call the lift down. Counterweight starts traveling up. The sheaves you can see are turning. All the wheels are turning. Ain't that nice? And now let's get into the lift. And let's travel up. I can see it works beautifully. Lift goes up, like so. And then if I send it down, you can see this is actually moving. So this is what we wanted to achieve. This is essentially my secret system. So now, we successfully built a super realistic elevator. All you need to do is do the traction machine placement and all of that to make sense if you want it to make sense. And that's really well. So that's basically it for this video. So I hope you liked it. Hope you learned something new, and hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and hope you actually try and build it. And if you build it, tell me in the comments if you don't understand something, or if your lift works, or if you find a new, much better way to deal with this problem. So anywho, that's it for this video. I hope you liked it, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.